Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wayne's World of Science and Technology. Today we're going to take a slight detour. We're going to talk about... the dog is pulling. The dog does that. We're going to talk about World War I and orange shirts and a bunch of other things. Canada in World War I gained a reputation for being a rather ferocious opponent, I guess is one way of putting it. To quote General Currie in his 1919 speech to the Canadian Club, "We would have gassed the entire German army if we could have." Canadians don't feel any shame about that. Canadian troops during World War I quite often didn't take prisoners. Canadians feel no shame about that. A school took away an orange shirt from a child. We'll feel shame about that. That's why you'll see a lot of Canadians wearing orange shirts, and that's why a lot of them have this logo. You can see it on my chest. Every child matters. Okay, a bit of history. Canada hasn't always done well with its First Nations. And I know a lot of people consider our insistence on calling these nations as ridiculous, considering many of them have under 1,000 population. But they are legally nations. They exist within Canada by treaty. These treaties go back to, the first English settlements, and quite frankly, we didn't always do a very good job of honoring the treaties. And that is something that Canadians feel very badly about. A young girl was going to school, and she had been given a brand new orange shirt to start school with. The school in question was one of our rather horrid attempts to civilize the savages, which is how they put it at the time. This is not my wording, this is theirs, by making them more English, or French if you were in Quebec. And this was against treaty. It was also complete mistreatment of the children involved. And, the horrors of the residential school system are incredible. I don't want to get into them here because the video would last about 10 hours. But Canadians feel a lot of shame over this. This is why you'll see a lot of Canadians wearing orange shirts. Not just at the time school starts, which is when Orange Shirt Day is. And by the way, Orange Shirt Day is not official. It is a day that we implemented ourselves. The people implemented it, not the government. So you see these orange shirts on a regular basis, but around the start of school, you will see them everywhere. A lot of Canadians have orange shirts in their closets. I have 6 myself, all with various messages on them, supporting our First Nations brothers and sisters. My ex-wife has a dozen of them. She's really into it. Of course, on the other hand, she also got declared an elder by one of the First Nations elders, so I guess that makes a difference from her point of view. But we said Canadians rock and roll differently. War crimes? No big deal. Treating children badly? That gets us going. And it's a difference that a lot of people outside of Canada just don't seem to understand. And I don't think it's easily explainable. Legally, Canada doesn't belong to Canada per se. Legally, most of Canada actually belongs to the First Nations to this day. We live here, in effect, on sufferance. When I say on sufferance, it's not quite like that. It's a lot more complicated. Now that we've gotten most of the major issues straightened out with treaties, and I said most of them. There's still some that are being fought through the courts right now. But now that we've got most of the major treaty issues solved, the First Nations actually enjoy being part of Canada mostly. There are a lot of advantages, especially when they look south of the border and see what the United States has become. Or, for that matter, how the First Nations in other countries are treated. Basically, Canada does, now at least, a fairly decent job. And we are doing our best to get better at it. A lot of places, quite frankly, no one gives a damn. If the First Nations get destroyed, hey, it's progress, right? We don't think that way. And it makes for a situation where most outsiders really have no clue about us because they don't know how we work. They don't know how this all plays together with the First Nations, the country itself, the provinces, one of which was a separate nation at one point. Look up Newfoundland and Labrador. It was a country on its own until 1956 when it joined Canada. And effectively, Canada isn't a normal country. Canada is closer in shape to either a rather strange empire. If you look at the exterior definition of empire, Canada pretty well matches that. Or, and pardon me, the dog is turning me around again. Or it's basically the European Union on steroids. What would the European Union be if it had 630 constituent nations instead of 31? Or however many it's got. It makes things a bit complicated dealing with social issues in Canada, dealing with any issues in Canada, because there is so much division. But while there's so much division, we also work together extremely well. And that comes down to our environment. When you live in a place where effectively the country tries to kill you 3/4 of the year, you learn to adapt. I guess the best way of putting it. Your culture changes. Just like if you were to see a culture in the Middle East, they're going to have certain cultural drivers because of the environment. Or you see a culture in the rainforest, like in the Brazilian Amazon. Different locations will cause different impacts on the cultures. And Canada's location has caused a lot of impact on the culture and changes in ways that leave us, how should I put it? We're self-organizing. We have to be. Country's so damn big, you can't count on help coming from the government. So you organize with your friends and neighbors to get things done. You might even organize with your enemies, because survival matters more than a little bit of an argument over who won the last football game. Anyway, I know I've been rambling a little bit here, but I want you to think about the implications of this. You have a country that effectively thinks war crimes is relatively normal, though we don't do them anymore. Well, at least we don't do those. We'll invent new ones. But that goes absolutely gaga over a 6-year-old child having her orange shirt taken away. Think of the implications about that and how it impacts Canada's relations with the rest of the world. What do you think that means? I'm curious to see what you think. Post something in the comment. If you like what I did, do the usual, like, subscribe, and beyond that, have a good day, folks.